This is the mysterious and forgotten lands iceberg. If you don't know what an iceberg video is, then it's quite simple to explain. Just like a real iceberg, this video goes from the top, meaning the most visible and well-known part, to the bottom, the part nobody sees or knows about. This iceberg has around 40 entries, divided into 6 different layers, one more mysterious than the other. Due to this iceberg having so much information in it, I will split the video in 3 parts, and today we will focus on the first 3 tiers of this iceberg. For this reason, I highly suggest you subscribe to the channel and press the notification bell, especially if you're a newcomer, so you don't miss the next parts of the iceberg. Now that this has been cleared up, let's get to the topic of this video. Mysterious and hidden lands have always been a part of human history, going as far back as ancient times. Humans are just destined to forget their history as long as it's far enough in the past, and to then recover it as myths and legends or conspiracies. This video will delve into many of the lands lost to history, explaining their origins, locations, and other cool facts about them. Let's get started. Atlantis. This is the most well-known legendary land of all. The sunken continent of Atlantis is a fictional continent created by ancient Greek philosopher Plato in his work De Timaeus and Critias, where this land was described as the antagonistic and developed naval power based in the Atlantic Ocean that besieged ancient Athens with superior advanced technology. But ancient Athens, differently from all its neighbors, managed to fend off the Atlantean invasion, causing a series of events that would bring the gods to submerge Atlantis into the sea and end its civilization forever. For the longest time, the myth of Atlantis was forgotten and sidelined as one of the many allegories of hubris made by Plato. But once the Europeans started the Age of Discovery, the sunken continent myth was rediscovered with enthusiasm, becoming the source of most of the future debates on lost lands and islands. I won't stay too much on this, since it's literally the most well-known entry in the whole iceberg, and everybody has heard about Atlantis at least once in their lives. Eden. Eden is the name given to the terrestrial paradise described in the book of Genesis in the Bible. Although completely theological and divine in nature, many in history have speculated that Eden was not removed by God once he kicked Adam and Eve out of it, but instead it could be found by searching for the right passage in the Holy Book. Since it was described as the source of 4 tributaries, it was thought to exist either in the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and the Euphrates or in Armenia. A city called Eridu, considered the first settlement ever in Mesopotamia, was thought to be, by some, the garden's location. Eden was considered a real place in medieval times, and its depiction was popular in maps. When Columbus first arrived in the New World, one of the hypotheses he conjured to justify the appearance of the new lands was that he had found Eden. In works of literature, such as Dante's Purgatory, Eden is imagined as the final layer of the Mount of Purgatory, the closest one to heaven. Fireland. When Europeans first arrived in this part of the New World, they were amazed. Everything seemed otherworldly. The climate was inhospitable, the natives violent and uncooperative. The land itself was cold, and yet it was called the Land of Fire due to the bonfires that the explorers could see from the coasts upon discovering it. Nowadays it is identified as Tierra del Fuego, a lightly developed and sparsely populated region of South America, divided between Chile and Argentina, first discovered by Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan in 1520. The natives of this area had managed to resist the terrible living conditions of the island due to its scarce resources, harsh climate, and isolation. They used techniques such as covering their entire body in animal fat to resist the winters, and developed extremely strong bodies that could resist the cold even naked, as they could maintain air in their lungs longer than other humans. Svalbard. The Svalbard Islands are the northernmost archipelago of Europe. and are a special administrative region of Norway. Despite its normal appearances, in the modern age, this archipelago is the closest thing we have to living in the Ice Age. The average temperature of the Svalbard Islands is -10 degrees Celsius, a temperature not suited for humans, but that polar bears, original inhabitants of the islands, are really fond of. The situation of Svalbard is very peculiar, as it is the only place on Earth where it is illegal to die, as dying would never result in decomposing due to permafrost omnipresent on the islands, and would instead cause future generations to be infected with your illnesses and bacteria. Along with this, Svalbard may also be humanity's best chance to survive the apocalypse, as the capital, Longyearbyen, contains, hidden underneath it, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, where a specimen of every seed and plant existing on Earth is strongly protected, giving the possibility of an almost dying humanity the hope to restart an agricultural revolution in case of apocalypse. Hyperborea. So, if Atlantis is the big thing of submerged continents, Hyperborea is the big thing of hidden lands. Its first accounts come from the ancient Greeks that described it as the land beyond the north wind, protected in the south by the walls, or mountains, of Riparion. It was blessed with eternal spring, and its main river, Eridanos, was populated by white swans. Its peaks were inhabited by griffins that protected Hyperborea's gold reserves. It was said to be a theocracy run by the northern giants, the natives of Hyperborea. This land was referenced in a magnitude of other Greek myths, such as Perseus, Heracles, Phaeton, and more. It's been quoted by famous writers such as Pindarus, Herodotus, Plato, Strabo, Pausanias, Pliny the Elder, and so many more. So this is one of the lands in the north of the ancient world that has the most amount of sources and references in historical and literary works. Therefore, where is it? The candidates for the location of Hyperborea are multiple and span the millennia. Herodotus said it was north of Scythia, which roughly corresponds to modern-day Kazakhstan and Ukraine, so it would be describing northern Russia. Diodorus Siculus described it as an island with a spherical temple, which many have interpreted as Britain's Stonehenge, making Hyperborea be somewhere in modern England. Centuries later, in the Middle Ages, the Scandinavians that read the description of Hyperborea started self-identifying themselves as Hyperboreans, saying that Hyperborea was in Scandinavia. Even later, in 1726, John Toland, an Irish nationalist interested into the Borean question, connected the temple described by Diodorus with the spherical temple known as the Callanish stones that existed in the Isle of Lewis, making Hyperborea be located somewhere in northern Scotland or Ireland. And then comes the group that is now the reason why Hyperborea is so well known, the National Socialists. Philosophers such as Julius Evola believed that the Hyperboreans were the original superior humans, and that the spreading and mixing of the Hyperboreans with other peoples made them de-evolved. This idea was shared by many esoteric groups of the German National Socialist Party, especially in the context of Hyperborea being the homeland of the Aryans, which was what Germany called ethnic Germans at the time. The popular black symbol of a sun with many rays, I cannot show it fully or the video will be blocked, was supposed to represent Hyperboreans and their energy. It is even speculated that the German mission to the poles was to rediscover Hyperborea. To this day, the legend of Hyperborea is covered in controversies and arguments, like the 2018 proclamation by the governor of Murmansk Oblast, Russia, that identified the Kola Peninsula as Hyperborea. Troy. The city of Troy, also called Ilium, famous for the story of the wooden horse, was the focus of the Iliad, the greatest work of Homer, and has generally been regarded by many as one of the long-lost cities of pre-antiquity. Although a myth to many, the city was speculated to be somewhere in Anatolia, modern Turkey, but nobody could put a finger on it. But in 1870, all of that changed when Heinrich Schliemann, fully convinced of the existence of the city, decided to start excavations near Hisarlik. Lo and behold, he would find multiple layers of a city successfully identified as the mythical Troy, even in destroying parts of it in the process of bringing it to the light, due to the use of dynamite. Gobekli Tepe. Some think this is the oldest remaining religious site in the world. Others believe it's proof that ancient unknown civilizations were far more developed than we think of now. But all that's sure is that Gobekli Tepe is the world's longest standing structure. In the southwest of the modern-day country of Turkey, this Neolithic land seems to have been constructed over 11,500 years ago, over 7,000 years before the ancient Egyptians. It was discovered first in the 60s, where wrongful age identifications let it be forgotten for 30 years. Then, finally, in the 90s, it was rediscovered when its full glory was brought to light by the researchers from Turkey and Tel Aviv. The building has many high reliefs that show all sorts of animals and beasts, alongside unidentified objects and more. Hypothetically, it's been speculated that it was a religious structure that served as a base for rituals that could see animal and human sacrifices, although these claims have not been confirmed. The thing that makes this structure so baffling to the world is that, if we follow the modern accepted historical consensus, in the times this structure was created, humans were still only hunter-gatherers and very early farmers, and we have no proof of united civilizations that could have embarked in the creation of such a site. The existence of Gobekli Tepe itself has convinced many of the possibility of advanced civilizations going way further back into human history, in times fully forgotten by the modern man. Island of California. While we all know what California is, what's less well known is the fact that originally it was believed to be an island. This came from Garcia Ordóñez's account of an island with stiff cliffs in the West Indies called California, inhabited by women of black skin, fully dressed in golden armors, due to gold being the only metal present on the island. The conquistador Hernán Cortés, after finishing his conquest of the Aztec Empire, sent his cousin, Diego de Becerra, to find the island. When they arrived to modern-day Baja California, they found the stiff cliffs, and due to the large bay between Baja California and the rest of Mexico, the expedition concluded that the new territory was indeed an island. Following this and some more expeditions, the maps of the time started showing California as an island. The truth about California would only start arriving to the wider public once Eusebio Kini proved that California was connected to the mainland in one of his expeditions. I have discussed more in length about this topic in one of my other videos. If you're interested, remember to check it out. El Dorado. Conquistadors love gold. This is a well-known fact. They destroyed 3 of the world's most advanced non-European civilizations just to get this yellow shiny metal. But if they had the chance, they would have destroyed a 4th. And this is where El Dorado's story begins. El Dorado means the golden, a city or a lake. Yes, you heard that right, a lake, as there was said to be a lake where southern Indios would pour their gold deposits, but let's not get off track. Or a city of fabulous riches and gold awaiting. Described first by Columbus himself as one of the things he could see on the coast of the New World, this city was later thought to be a place of refuge for the Incas escaping from the plagues that the Europeans brought to the continent, and when they escaped, they brought their massive quantities of gold with them. But El Dorado wasn't just a city, it was also thought to be a ruler, a man so rich that he was entirely covered in gold, a real Mansa Musa of South Africa. With these myths becoming more and more popular in conquistador circles, all that was missing was the location of this wealth, and that's how the expedition started. First across the mountains of New Granada, then from Peru, and finally across Brazil and all the Amazon. Despite all the searching, El Dorado was nowhere to be found. But hey, at least while doing all these explorations, the conquistadors would discover many gold deposits, and other gold they could easily steal from the natives. Agartha. While part of the larger Hollow Earth theory, Agartha has become renowned in the space of hidden lands for its connection to the Germans during World War II. Agartha's legend started becoming well known when, in 1947, Vice Admiral Byrd of the American fleet expressed his desire to find a land beyond the North Pole. this land would be described as full of vegetation, lakes, rivers, extinct animals, and could have been the original source of all living life. This theory, while not completely popular at the time, was shared by many others. Many high-ranking German government figures were sure of the existence of Agartha, such as Himmler considered it to be Germany's destiny to discover the land beyond the pole and inside of the earth. Some associate the hidden land as the kingdom of Shambhala, a myth of a land inside Earth popular in Buddhist mythology, where it could be accessed by the gates of the otherworld, present in the Himalaya mountain chain of Tibet. Terra Australis. In ancient Greece, the ideal of balance was one of the pillars of society. Balance had to be found everywhere, from the gods to the mortals. Not even the earth itself could avoid this balance, or at least that's what they thought. This was the reason why, despite being aware that they had never traveled so far south as to see what was on the other side of the planet, the theory of a Terra Australis, a continent in the southern hemisphere, meaning southern land in Latin, covering at least as much land as there was in the northern hemisphere, made complete sense to them. After the Greeks, the Latins took this concept as their own, even thinking of it as the fourth continent of the world, following Asia, Africa and Europe. During the Renaissance, the continent would be in detail in the maps of naval routes to Africa, and after the discovery of the Americas, the concept of there being a southern land in the extreme south of the planet became even more popular, appearing on almost every globe of the world, from the 15th to the 18th century. Despite this, nobody actually had any proof of its existence until the 17th century discovery of Australia, taking its name exactly from Terra Australis, even if it was called New Holland for a while due to the Dutch exploration. The realization that Australia was way smaller than expected crushed the theory of Terra Australis that was about to die. But only 19 years from the circumnavigation of Australia, the discovery of a new, even larger landmass in the South Pole was made. But now there was no name for the true Terra Australis, since Australia took it instead. For this reason, the new ice-covered continent was renamed to Antarctica in the 1890s, name given to it by the Scottish cartographer George Bartholomew. Lemuria. While Atlantis remains the most famous sunken continent hypothesized in history, one would say that Lemuria comes in close second. Biggest difference between Atlantis and Lemuria is the date. While the first starts in the ancient times, Lemuria is a far newer concept, only becoming popular in the late 19th century. It was hypothesized by Philip Lutley Sclater, an ornithologist that worked for the British Museum and had worked for a long time in the island of Madagascar, where he would find the fossils of the local fauna, like the lemurs, whose name he took inspiration from, to be way different from the ones of continental Africa, and closer to the ones of southern India. When Sclater postulated this theory, the concept of continental drift didn't exist yet, so to him, only valid explanation was the existence of a huge land that once connected Madagascar and India. From this original proposal, the theory expanded far and wide, with people like Ernst Haeckel saying that Lemuria was the continent of origin of humans and where the Garden of Eden used to be located. Then came the Tamil Indians themselves, that identified the lost continent as Kumari Kandam, the legend of the sunken cradle of humanity that originated in the 15th century. And as more people started speculating on it, Lemuria lost its original scientific purpose and became mystical and cryptic, like how Elena Blavatsky defines it as the home of the Australian Aboriginals and of aliens and lizard people that could use telepathy to inform a select people of Lemuria's existence. With the continent being appropriated by the religious and the mystics, actual historians and scientists stopped believing in its existence, and the whole concept died out of favor when the theory of continental drift was accepted by the greater public. Kolchis. Most famous for the Argonauts, an ancient Greek poem that talked about a party of famous warriors, demigods and characters from Greek mythology going out at sea to recover the golden fleece from the king of Kolchis that was protecting it with a dragon, the region of Kolchis remains an archaic myth to this day. While most historians identify it as the ancient kingdom of Gyrisi, formed by the Proto-Georgian Kartvelians, the origin of the name Kolchis remains a mystery. The famous Greek historian Herodotus described the Colchians as dark-skinned and woolly-haired, making the association with the Georgians more difficult. And with that last entry, we concluded the first part of the Mysterious and Forgotten Lands Iceberg. I'll try putting up the next part as fast as possible, hopefully in less than a month. So stay tuned and subscribe so you don't miss it. Goodbye. And see you next time.